I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. It doesn't matter. The recording side.
It is next, the recording is live on the website.
No, but he does get it.
I don't see too much. We go like a small
I'm getting out of the house.
You know what? You know, I'm happy wearing it. Much rather be my own. Jersey is doing better than those states. Yeah.
Everyone has to say things.
Yeah. I like these. And like how it works. He's home. What happened out? They probably would be coming back. This is what she was like. I don't know when they're coming back. They got to get the Delta control. What's going on?
Yeah, he does. It's here for a reason.
Just for a reason.
They're going for a number of resolutions that were on fire. There's a lot of like big ones that were just recently, they're trying to all,
All we do, let's rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The time, date, and location of this meeting was published in the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger and posted on the bulletin board in the office of the Township of Lakewood at least 48 hours in advance. The public has the right to attend this meeting, and reasonable comprehensive minutes of this meeting will be available for public inspection. This meeting meets the criteria of the Open Public Meetings Act.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Stern.
Here.
Mr. Sable. Mr. Flansbaum. Mr. Herzl.
Here.
Mr. Renner.
Here.
Mr. Isaacson.
Here.
Mr. Meyer. Mr. Raisik. Mr. Fuentes. Mr. Ackerman.
Okay, swearing of professionals.
This is where testimony is given before the board of the truth, the whole truth, not the truth.
Yes.
Okay, we have the resolutions. Ali, first of all, are there any resolutions that are being pulled for tonight?
Yes, the resolution for Kifar Shabbos, SB 2413, the applicant's attorney asked to carry that to the next meeting because he has some changes he'd like to make to it.
Applicant's attorney? Okay.
Yes. Our next meeting is September 14th, so just have a note that we carry that.
Okay, now, the other three resolutions that we have, I think on Yeshiva Chamsar, we told them to come back. Are you on Chamsar?
Good evening, Mr.
I
Chairman.
think, one second, I think we told you to come back and show us a plan.
Right, so I understand, I think not everybody's had an opportunity to review that plan. We've submitted it, I think Ali has emailed it around. We're fine also carrying it to the next meeting so the board members have the opportunity to review it. We do have a copy of it here, but again, if everybody wants to review it properly.
We could have the plan delivered to the board members' houses and dropped off 11 by 17. If you would prefer bigger ones that are easier to see, I can have them delivered to the board.
Yeah.
Can he ask Eric your opinion and give his comment?
I've actually looked at the concept. We're okay with the concept which is shown. I just have one question in terms of Ryan. Are there any changes shown on this that require any new relief?
No.
Okay. Yeah, we've looked at the plan. We're okay with it conceptually.
Is it basically what the board asked for?
It's what the board asked for, and the orientation of the roads going into Cross Street are perpendicular, which is what Ocean County wants, so I understand.
And it's a regular size road?
Yes, yes.
It meets our
Yes, it
RSS?
meets our size. The other thing I could do is delivering the plans. I could deliver a full-size one. I could deliver the one that was submitted so the board could see. Because things shifted the way we said we were going to shift.
And that road with the new roadway, is that straight to?
That's a out. It's an RSIS compliant out.
We asked for a road.
Well, you said you wanted, the discussion was vehicular access between the two.
Right.
If you had a 32-foot wide road, cars parked on each side of it, it's only 18 foot anyway. So, the 18 feet provides for two-way traffic. And it provides for exactly what we're talking about, people getting.
And how do you stop people from parking on the road?
I want a road. Exactly. I want a road, I don't want a road.
Our intent was a road, red roadway, 32 sidewalks on both sides.
Let's come back at the next meeting and we'll get plans in the meantime.
Okay, so number one and number two, we're not voting on. Number three, on the resolution.
Number 3 is SB 2419 for No Sabora. I understand there was revisions made this afternoon, which are available on the online drive. I haven't heard any further comments.
Okay, Mr. Jackson or Jillian, please just add in what was added on.
Do we have copies of the resolution, please?
They're available online. We don't typically print them. Unless Jillian may have brought them out, I don't know.
What was changed today?
Mr. Chairman, we made one main change to the resolution. There was an additional condition put in here. I'll read it out loud. It says, condition number 1, the board approved only one banquet hall. The parking and circulation took into account only one hall. If the applicant desires to create additional banquet space, board approval must first be obtained.
Mr. Chairman, if I
I'm sorry, Chairman. Also, we had discussions about that sidewalk along current Russell Road building. With them improving that roadway, we had definitely agreed to add sidewalk along that. I guess that's the west side of this property. I don't think I saw it in the resolution.
Condition number 2 in the resolution says applicant shall provide additional sidewalk near the entrance of the proposed building to the satisfaction of the board engineer.
That was not that part.
That's not that
It's what I need is the west side of the property, the unimproved road, I don't have the exact name of that road now.
So we'll
They're
make
finishing
sure
it, we'll
that-
put another side up. Unless there's a resolution or, I don't know.
If I also could just add, your changes made this afternoon, I just been able to upload it. I don't think they were ever sent to me, so I never had an opportunity to speak with the client about it.
All right.
Apparently someone saw it online, indicated, so there's some changes that we have some comments on. I haven't even spoken to the client about it, other than that there was a change.
So is there an can we put this off to the next meeting to adopt it, so we can digest it?
There is a little bit of emergency in terms of that it's a school. If I could just ask that we table this till later on in the evening. I don't think I have any objection to what Mr. Sable was indicating. I think that's what we had discussed as far as the sidewalks and the walkways. I'm not objecting to that, but at least I have an opportunity that we can review it, and I can speak with my client to make sure they're okay with it. I'm here for the evening.
Right, the only change I think that we made since this afternoon was that only one wedding per banquet.
Like I said, I think there's a lot more to it. There's testimony went over 2 or 3 meetings, and there's stuff that's being indicated in the wording that I don't think was ever discussed. So I just want an opportunity to have that conversation. As I said, I never got it.
I think Terry's office had some comments on the resolution as well regarding the additional meeting dates and correcting some numbers in the resolution that wasn't.
In fact, all respect, we're not starting to build, we're losing 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The building is flat now.
Again,
There's trees over there now, it's not like when they need to approve the building for a CO.
I don't feel comfortable asking for a vote if Terry has comments on it and the resolution is not complete.
What's not complete?
Well, things that have to be added.
We circulated it.
I only have 2 years to
We try to get the resolutions prepared by the next meeting, which is difficult.
Right.
And we generally do that, and sometimes there are issues. Tonight, all rise.
All right.
Tonight, so,
Let the record reflect that Mr. Committeeman Akron is here.
the statute says we have 45 days to adopt a resolution, so there's plenty of time, within the time that we do it. And I think what Mr. Herzl is saying is that they want time for it to be circulated and digested, and people can look at it and not feel pressure or rush. We'll do it right.
Maybe we can do both. Mr. Pfeffer wants to have a chance to consult with this client, come back later in the meeting, give us whatever information we want, and then we still don't have to vote on it, but it might be useful to have whatever.
His information to put on record is useful, but I think the board members have to feel comfortable to vote on it, and then they have to see the resolution. If we don't have a resolution to see.
I also spoke with Mr. Herzl. I mean, this has been coming up. You know, we cover a lot of territory here. We've been a little short-staffed, but what we used to do in a different town is I had someone listen to the entire tape, make a record of it. We did that. We're going to start doing that here starting in September. So we've hired additional staff members. So we'll be more on top of the details and the conditions of the resolution. We also have to be more careful when we make our motions to make sure that the motions have all the conditions of the motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm sure just remember that we can in the future, if there's changes, even if they the attorney has to review it.
In fairness, absolutely. We try to circulate them to everyone. And
I always get it. I'm just saying this was, last minute, so. Thank you.
Okay. On to number 4. Gedebelet Torah. Anybody have any objections? Do any? Gedebelet Torah.
I don't think we need to watch it.
No, you
So I'll make a motion to approve.
No.
Memorial Station, I can't vote on it.
Okay.
That's when I vote, okay?
Right.
That's why I've been late tonight, 'cause I'm still tired, because it's leaving at 4 in the morning.
I can't have to injure. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
To approve resolution number 4, Gedebelet Torah. And I'll second it. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Now let's go on to public hearing. Are there any changes to the agenda, the published agenda?
I do have one change. The attorney for application SB 2422, 820 Swarthmore, approached me and said that some neighbors have reached out, said they've hired an engineer who's reviewing the plans. They asked for some additional time for those neighbors, so I'd recommend we carry that to the September 14th meeting.
Okay,
I'll move that.
okay, I'll move it to second. All in favor to move it? Aye. Okay, any other changes?
There's one other change. I received a proposed ordinance from the clerk's office this morning. I did email it out to the board, and it is available on the OneDrive. However, it's not listed on the agenda, so that will need a discussion at some point as well.
Which one, the ordinance?
Ordinance. It's just not listed on here anywhere.
No, it's not. I downloaded it. Basically, the township just changed a few things in the ordinance.
Yes, you have a copy of it up there. It's just not listed on the agenda, so we.
Oh, there is a copy?
Yes, at the bottom of the stack.
Only the request form, I don't think there's actual, well, that is already in.
Here it is, here's the, here it is.
The other map, the tax map, show which areas are shown as not affected.
I'm sorry, I only have what their office provided. I can probably pull it up. I didn't review that in detail because I only got it today.
I think this is all pertaining to the fairways of Lakewood. In order to make peace. I don't know if the judge wanted or the township wanted.
John, did you read
The ordinance, I have it over here.
We went over that with Mr. Hensel this afternoon, Jillian did that, so if you want to address what the highlights are, she has a memo prepared for that, so go ahead.
Yes, I spoke to Mr. Hensel about this. The chairman was correct when he said that this is really stemming from the Fairways litigation. Basically what happened was that there was a global settlement reached, and the municipality was required to adopt a few ordinance changes as part of that settlement. There's really three main highlights. Number one, the ordinance is now going to include the golf course property, the Eagle Ridge property, into the overlay zone that will allow them to buy property for tree save purposes moving forward from restricted areas. Number two, there's just a change in the buffer requirements indicated for the golf course area. There was a 75-foot buffer before for a portion of it, now it's being reduced to 25 feet. And number three, they're tweaking the definition of open space. The old ordinance defined open space as saying you have to have 50% of the property had to be open space. And that definition of open space included front, side, and rear yards, so anything that was pervious in those areas was considered open space. Now it's going to be 50% of all open space or 20% of common open space areas of the homeowners association. Per Mr. Hensel, his explanation, there was an issue with residents being able to build three-season rooms, and now with the tweak in ordinance, they will be able to do this and still comply with the open space definition. So again, the litigation brought out this issue with open space, and the ordinance has been redefined to make all the parties happy.
Is this litigation to help all the neighbors from Eagle Ridge?
Fairways.
For the fairways?
Yes.
That's not for the Eagle Ridge.
No, of course it is. There's a fairways, so,
protecting-
homeowners
protecting-
suing,
Right.
so this appears to be a settlement, which is
And-
shocking.
Yeah, but I don't see anything over here that's helping the fairways. Jillian just said we're reducing the buffer, we're reducing open space. It's helping Eagle Ridge, not the fairways, according to me.
But maybe the open space, I'm not understanding, maybe the open space got more favorable to the fairways.
I'm sure there was notice during the council meeting, there was notice
If
about.
this is settlement, I'm okay with it, but,
Mr. Chairman, I could provide a clarification. The Fairways homeowners were concerned. The definition, the ordinance said 50%.
John, does he have to be sworn?
It won't hurt, but no, but it's not on an application, you can just give comment on this.
Okay.
So their concern was the 50% open space related to property in their yards. This is clarifying that their yards, the open space per the definition before, was really a pervious coverage thing. So it was a sloppy written ordinance from a long time ago. This clarifies it, so it does help the people.
What does it protect them with what?
When they go to put an addition on their house or something, nobody's gonna be saying you're doing that in the open space and and therefore it has different things.
For example, if you look at the section, the way it was written, it said minimum open space, 50% of gross area of ACP tract, but now it says either 50% open space of gross area of ACP or 20% of common open space gross area of ACP tract shall mean those portions not covered by buildings, structures of any kind, streets, or other surfaces paved with impervious material.
So they got something for their existing fairways homes.
Well,
This is for adult communities, so that means that they have more flexibility to do development on their properties, and in exchange, they,
Are they restricting anything to Eagle Ridge?
no, but it seems like they got a goodie.
So they're willing to settle?
Well, there
Yeah,
is,
so this-
the other parts of the settlement that they got don't require an ordinance change.
Is it settled?
Yes.
The lawsuit is.
They signed a settlement agreement, and part of the settlement agreement
Part of
is,
this
and the town was part of the litigation, and the thing that the town has to do as part of their settlement is adopt this ordinance.
Can you talk about the setback?
Yeah, the setback was,
It's changed from 75 feet to 25
Right.
feet of any exterior boundary line of the planning community.
the tract setback said you can't have any structure within 75 feet of the thing, and it was, that was at the zoning board where we had the conversation on what's a structure. And per the MLUL definition of a structure, that could be a tree. The Eagle Ridge plan was designed with the parking in the backyard and the houses moved up to fit into that rule. Both the Fairways and Eagle Ridge decided that it's better to have a 25-foot real buffer rather than 75 feet.
Mr. Flannery, you're familiar with how this was, came about, I presume, because you
Yes.
were involved in the Fairways application. And Eagle Ridge, I'm sorry, I put the same. But is this the product that the homeowners have agreed to as part of the settlement?
Yes.
So this is something that Mr. Henson's office worked on, the Chief Fair's office worked on,
Yes.
presumably with council.
All the parties worked on it. They signed an agreement that said this is what
And
to
this is
do.
part of the settlement agreement,
Yes.
these are the required changes, the
Yes.
ordinance per the settlement agreement.
Yes, and Eagle Ridge agreed to a lot of other things that aren't incorporated in this in order to make the settlement. That's what a settlement is. Each party gives you.
So, and as Mr. Hensel explained, I mean, the purpose of this is to revise the ordinance and tighten it up a little bit. This is what they wanted.
I would love to see some correspondence from the opposing attorney. I think it's Mr. Donato, right?
Michelle Donato?
Mr.
Yes.
Donato's okay with this?
Yes.
And Mr. Snyder's okay with this?
Yes, and
We've got to change our minds.
Presumably, because it's an ordinance as part of the settlement agreement, so they're adopting.
They're just asking for our opinion,
Yeah.
so
Right.
we're not some opinion.
This only for adult communities, it doesn't
Yeah.
affect Eagle Ridge at all.
That was part of
The
it.
golf course.
well,
Doesn't
Eagle,
affect golf courses.
the golf course is able to develop as a planned unit development, and this affects planned unit developments also.
The ordinance only changes for adult communities.
Which is,
I didn't look at what Mr. Hensel did, I didn't look at anything when there was something.
okay, no problem.
Thank you very much. And this is only this block and lot, that area, it doesn't affect anyone else in the township.
Well, it's a change to the,
And they give us only Schedule B lots.
Well, no, this is the changes to the planned unit development ordinance, I don't know where that is.
Look at the last page, page 5.
Yeah,
Only
you
the
have a
Schedule
list
B.
of properties that this pertains to.
I think that's just planned properties that have to do with preservation, Schedule B. That's what properties can be developed on in accordance with the non-contiguous cluster provisions. That's not necessarily where there may or may not be other adult communities within the town.
Yeah, these are definitions for adult communities, and so this would, I think, would possibly have a global.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move. To recommend.
We have a motion and a second, roll call please.
I'm sorry.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Stern,
Yes.
Mr. Siegel,
Yes.
Mr. Herzl,
Yes.
Mr. Renner, Mr. Isaacson. I'm assuming you're not going to say this. Okay, thank you.
let's continue on the public hearing right now, but I know you said the number 3 is being pulled tonight. As far as I know, number 2 also. I don't think we have a quorum on number 2. We can do it first. I want to do it first. But I think the number 2 is being pulled. We don't have a quorum. It's a continuation. I mean, it's a reconsideration. We don't have. I don't think Mr. Isaacson listened to it. Mr. Rand doesn't want to say anything. Okay, I listened to it. Mr. Stearns, we only have 3 people, so I don't think we can listen to it.
Well, we start from scratch, if they want to.
Well, we can't restart the denial.
Yeah, that's, we can't start that from scratch because
Okay, so we don't have a quorum for tonight.
Okay.
So we do have, we did submit paperwork, and we also did notice for this evening, so we can approach it as a rehearing.
Come to the mic, please.
Sorry.
I just need a record of everything you
Sorry,
said.
Joe Kashuba, KB Engineering Services.
No, we cannot approach that as a rehearing, because it's a reconsideration that was already denied, and the reconsideration is just to say, look, these were the circumstances in fairness and in justice, we think the board might have voted differently had it been aware of this, and knew this fact. You could lay that out, but to start a hearing over, that just would not be appropriate. We can't start the hearing over. It's just a matter of whether the board would feel differently if there were, in light of what you want to bring to their attention.
And the only way they could start again if they make some substantial change to the
They
plan.
have to make material change.
We submitted an exhibit with that material change, eliminating all variants, making it an as-of-right subdivision.
Technically, it's a new application, and
That's a new application.
Well,
But is that what you're actually asking the board to approve, or you're just
What we're
using that
asking the board
as
is
a
we're showing we
sample?
can get it as of right with no turnaround, no cul-de-sac. I have
But they're not
RSI,
actually
documentation from RSI saying we don't have to provide a turnaround.
If
We
it's a
think what we're providing, what the board heard is a better option.
Mr. Schuber, it's a totally conforming application right now.
We can show you a totally conforming application.
No variances.
That's not what they would like approved, though.
That's the only thing we could approve.
I don't think that's what they want.
I think Mr. Kashuba's logic, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the last hearing, he was unable to communicate that to the board because he couldn't have a dialogue with his client because of the limitations of the virtual format.
Correct.
So I think what his theory is that if the board had known, if I was able to articulate that this could be, it must be approved as right, and what we are proposing is better, then you would have had a different vote. And the board can say, no, we wouldn't have. Or you could say, you're right, we didn't think of that, we didn't realize that, and in the interest of justice.
I wasn't here, I listened to it, and there were a few people who were opposed to it, neighbors. I don't know, was this noticed for tonight? Are they here?
They said they were noticed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's your name?
Yaakov Elazar, 31 East State.
Okay.
A
Here
couple
we go.
other people.
Art William? Okay.
You don't have a quorum, right?
I have no problem. Okay, we're going to start with the correspondence. And Mr. Rennett, which applications can't you sit on?
I'm not gonna sit on this Main Street one,
Swamp was pulled.
Buffer's pulled,
And the last
and the last
subdivision?
one, and J. So why don't we just do the one for
Who were the 4 members who were here for Mr. Kashuba's application?
8th Street?
What's the name?
It was Mr. Stern, Mr. Sable, Mr. Glassman, who's not here, Mr. Meyer, who's not here, and Mr. Renner. At the time, however, he now has a new conflict with property owner, which he didn't the last time. So as of who's here, it's only Mr. Stern and Mr. Sable.
And I've listened to the whole meeting. We only have 3 people.
So we have 1, 2, 3 listened to the whole meeting.
I listened to the whole
3, who's 4? So if we had Ellie.
Justin and Jake.
Oh, so if we had Ellie, we still don't have 4.
Correct.
What was the option in starting from scratch?
Or we start from scratch, or they come back next month, and we have Jakey and Justin, and we have a quorum.
If you're going to start from scratch, that you can't do because of res judicata. if it's the same application.
Is that a form of martial arts?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's almost like a-
Mr. Jackson, that's what I asked the applicant. If it's a totally different application, it's a material change, because it's what they took off all the variances.
If it's a material change, they should do a new application, but that would have to be determined by the board if it's a material change. But I don't think they're proposing any changes tonight from what was voted on.
Correct.
So my question to the two members who were here, which I think is Mr. Sable and Mr. Stern, right? You both voted on that?
Yeah.
Would it matter to you if the applicant, now that the applicant has said, look, we have a by right application and what we propose is a better alternative? Would that change your vote? I thought that was discussed at the hearing, that there were certain things they could do as a matter of right.
So they wouldn't be, we have a by right application?
No.
We provided an exhibit showing we can provide a buy right application. Buy right application does not provide a turnaround, which was the basis of all the objections, to my knowledge. Buy right application also does not provide all the units in line. Something they push forward is a worse design in our opinion. We think providing a turnaround and the very minimal variance that we're asking for is a better application, which is why we're asking for reconsideration.
Did you didn't present that?
We didn't present the by right, and toward the end of the hearing, I specifically asked that I could offer more information. I was told, no, we're proceeding, and then immediately went to, someone brought it up for denial. And I was through that, trying to text and discuss with my client, but it was a Zoom meeting, so we were not in the same room to be able to coordinate that. But if you were to listen to the minutes towards the end of the meeting, I specifically asked to offer more information, and I'm told that no, we're proceeding.
Mr. Jackson, how do we go? Can we start from scratch, or they should come back with next month on Justin?
Starting from scratch is a different thing. Starting from scratch is a new application, because this is an application that was denied. Let's just logically, it was denied. The law says that they're entitled to come back and say, there was a mistake. There were circumstances that justice requires the board to take a look at this, just to see if what was not in the record would change your mind. That's different than starting from scratch. They can't
But
start
even
from scratch.
if the members who were here agreed that, oh yeah, we would have voted completely differently, don't we still have to have a quorum?
Yes, you would need
So,
those.
so we can't do anything anyways.
Question is, should come back in the next meeting when we have a full quorum that listen to the application originally, or bring it up now if we could bring it up?
So, John, can we, so it's raised judicata or it's not raised judicata?
Well, res judicata means it has to be a different application. If I were an objector, I'd be standing on my head and say, wait a minute, you denied this. You can't say, well, just start over.
I think it's,
A resolution also has been adopted.
we had objectors. I think you've been here enough. I think that this board, when something's on the edge and you have 100 people saying, yay, this is our background, we want it, we're a little bit more lenient.
Yeah.
But I recall a lot of objectors. So I think if we're going to give those objectors their day in court, and I think they're here, but I think we unfortunately have to start over. Or come back again and this is how the process. It's just too.
Well, we can't, you can't do it tonight.
We can't do it tonight anyways.
It wasn't advertised as a new application.
Right. So if it wasn't advertised, so those people, I see 2 objectors, maybe there would be 10 who had noticed.
And I asked Mr. Sable, would it matter to you if there was a by right app, if you knew that they could come back and get a by right application that, you know, might not like?
In general, so we give a denial, and if the planning board denies an application, can they come back next meeting with a by right application?
It's a material change.
When you go with variance, you come in by right. This wasn't advertised as a new application.
They're not proposing a change, they're proposing additional information that may have changed your
They
mind.
still want the plan that was denied. They
Right.
just want to say.
As long as you're not here, you
Here's
can
the
notice now.
Right. So I think what we're hearing is that to have those members here would be
Well,
necessary to proceed as a reconsideration.
The reason why I'm just trying for you to get the pulse, this might be a big exercise of futility, and that's why I asked Mr. Stern and Mr. Sable, would it matter to you on how you voted, if now that you know, that, the by right application, I mean, maybe you think the by right application is better, Or maybe say, I don't want
I
blood on my
can't-
hands, by right, I can't do anything about it.
I mean, I can't opine on whether I would like the by right application better, since I didn't see it.
He's got it.
You have it
Well,
now.
I don't.
And to be fair,
If the
maybe,
board wants, we can certainly present it, and then you can.
and you know what, that's probably not a good idea as I analyze it, because you should only do that with the whole group there, so we can have the group discussion.
Yeah, I think we're, okay.
I think the consensus of the
We
board
have
is.
no objection to that, we're just trying to save the board's time.
Don't you want to renotice? Do you have anybody that shows up? Any of the board?
So we did, I mean, the
Or do you
neighbors
notice
are
the new
here.
application?
So we also have to keep in mind, this is kind of, to use a legal term, jerking around the objectors too. I mean, they came out, they opposed it, they were denied, and, you know, I don't.
They weren't denied.
I'm sure coming here on a Tuesday night is not the funnest thing they can think of doing.
Okay, John, I think, Mr. Jackson, I think the consensus of the board is not to hear it tonight, let them renotice, you work it out the legal term, or they come back with a full board who was here that night,
You need the
and they reconsider, or they go with a new
Well,
application.
they shouldn't, they did notice for tonight, so we could just announce and carry to whenever we're gonna have the full.
With that
Yeah,
notice?
we would like
That
to,
notice
if we
is
can, try to
they're
reconsider.
not, they're not making a new application, they have to propose new plans, which they're not doing at this time.
And you're gonna have to make sure the same 5 board members are here. Probably more riskier than renoticing.
The new application.
Renoticing, they can't just renotice at will, they need a new application with a new proposal for the site development, they are not proposing that.
By the way, when we're not here at the last meeting, Terry, just a comment.
I saw, he did great.
Now you're telling me I did a fine job. Thank you, Mr.
But no, Al's right, we could announce and carry for the reconsideration, which is a long shot. Or if they wanna do a new application, then by right, they have to file a new application, they have to be deemed complete, they have to go through the whole process.
We have to adopt the denial
They have to adopt the
resolution.
denial.
And I would,
We understand.
I would suggest, if that's what you do, you might want to have your original plan as your backup. If-
We will have several plans with us at the time,
No,
regardless of what we.
I'm understanding the plan of action here is, here's what we can do by right, this is no good, here's what we can do with variances, this is better.
Yeah.
So I would just say, obviously, if you do go with a new application, with the by right application, say, here's what we could do by right, what do you guys think of this? I would just suggest having it up, that's all.
Okay, so Ally, when can we table this to?
September 14th is our next meeting, if the applicant believes they're going forward with the reconsideration.
The neighbor, very much.
Please state your name for the record.
Chaim Abadi.
I know you're with us.
245 Miller Road, Lakewood, Riviera, examiner on my fault. The point of the meeting tonight was the neighbors, we met with the neighbors, they understand that we can come in with a by right application, they know that, they saw it, we showed them the plan, they want us to come, they want us to come back to the board, which is why I asked John if we can come back for a re-hearing, in order to explain to the board that we're able to get a by right application, but they don't want the by right application, they would like a cul-de-sac at the end of the street. We submitted a plan for the hammerhead. The cul-de-sac is not attractive, Terry, based on, I'm not sure what, he knows the legal way, technical way how to say it. We're happy either way. The members of the neighborhood want a cul-de-sac.
Mr. Abadi, you could get in a cul-de-sac should Terry want that? Should Terry agree?
It's done, it's all done.
We submitted an exhibit with an undersized pole.
Okay, so I think.
There's a whole other chapter.
So Terry, that'll be up to you, what you feel is better, a hammerhead or a
It's up
cul-de-sac.
to me, up to the board, up to the township, and up to the state.
I understand.
Division of Community Affairs.
I understand, it's not, I mean, you're right, but it starts by you to say which is a better thing. Okay.
We would prefer that we get Terry this evening, Terry is still, and we will attempt to do the reconsideration. If in that time in discussion with my client, we decide to just make application for the by right, we will do so, but at this point, we'd like to proceed with the reconsideration.
Okay. Okay, so you let him, and before you, Rabbi Bond, before you sit down,
if you've been here enough, the board defers greatly to Mr. Vogt. So if he's not happy with your undersized cul-de-sac, it might be a good idea to significantly undersized cul-de-sac. It
It's
might
not
be
that
prudent
easy.
to supersize it a little bit.
Complicated.
Right.
Exactly. We provided a design that we feel us and Terry can both agree with. The neighborhood is the one that wasn't as enthusiastic about that design with a hammerhead. Which is why we came in with the cul-de-sac. There has also been input from council of the committee regarding that and the ability to obtain approval for that undersized cul-de-sac. There's a lot of need to
Did you
provide
meet
to.
Did you meet with traffic and safety?
Traffic and safety, I believe, reviewed the plan. I didn't meet with them personally, but.
Did they review the plan? Did they
to my
give
knowledge.
suggestions?
If not, I'll make sure they look at it for the next meeting.
Because you have to have everybody on board. It's a dead end, it's tight.
Yeah.
The traffic and safety, Terry, I don't know
I
who
was
else.
speaking with an official.
The fire official also.
Yeah, I'll speak with an official today. My understanding is there should be dialogue with traffic safety, the local fire official, public works. I do not know if there's any school buses in that area, whether or not they would have to do a turnaround.
Yep.
Whether or not that would be adequate. If everybody on the township level was on board, there is then a methodology that I have not done approaching the DCA, who has jurisdiction because the residential design standards are technically state authority. You can deviate. I spoke with Mr. Hensel. Mr. Hensel given a detailed memo to John and I, which I shared with Joe, as to what the procedure is, but we have to get to that point first.
Okay.
We'll meet with them prior to my hearing.
Okay, so you have more. Let me just hear from the neighbor.
Only one of those.
Yeah. I don't want to go into the whole discussion, just.
Right.
They have to do their homework, go back, meet with traffic safety, come up with a good plan that works. Are you agreeable with that?
I'm agreeable, but we have to do something here. As you were saying, it's a dead end the way it is now. It's not.
Have you seen the turnaround design that they proposed?
Yes, they, on their, like Mr. Body said, they did present it. We did have a meeting, and, we saw the cul-de-sac turnaround, even though it didn't meet the guidelines that they need, like it came upon 3 years ago when the fire commissioner, the fire commissioner and the township engineer, I have the papers here, when the development across the street was going up, the two houses over there.
You said on the record.
I sent it over, you got it? I mean, I wasn't sure.
I have
copies.
Did you put your name on record?
No, I didn't.
We can't take testimony.
I'm not taking this one, I just want to, you should know.
Oh, I'm sorry, you put his hand up to be sworn in.
Yeah, sure.
But
Yaakov Elazari, 31 East State Street.
Your what?
Yaakov Elazari, 31 East State Street.
Okay, just off the record, so misspoke.
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman, can you ask the applicant, would he agree to that application, or he would still oppose it? In a waste of time?
What I do is I agree with the cul-de-sac. In other words, something has to be done over there because of the parking problems. But if they do is
A hammerhead?
a hammerhead it's going to be blocked. It doesn't make the flow.
So you would agree to this application, you would not oppose it if we do that on the side?
Cul-de-sac, right. But if they revisit and say they don't need any ordinances, that didn't gain anything. Like the gentleman over there said, I could deny it too because.
I heard cul-de-sac, I heard undersized cul-de-sac and parking in the same sentence. And that's another thing, the arrow on my.
Of course we would like
If they're doing an undersized cul-de-sac.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lazaro, thank you. Okay, they have to come back and, okay, so when do we?
If the applicant is willing to give it to the neighbors, and the neighbors would rather they don't come back because they don't have.
It's more than that, I think. You have a state standard that was put into place to ensure that whatever turnarounds are proposed provide adequate turnaround.
I understand.
They're not off by a little bit, they're off by almost 50%. It's a big deviation.
So you're saying you may be able to get it, right?
According to Mr. Hensel, there is a procedure. If the township, after all your personnel look at it, if they say, you know what, the undersized cul-de-sac is better than a turnaround, if they all consent, then the town can, or the applicant can petition DCA.
Which is like a 2-year process, or?
I don't think it's a 2-year process, I think it would be,
A month or two?
probably a month or two.
Okay, so then, are we getting the process started?
Yeah, no, but to get the process started, I think it starts here. We have to say what we want, and
We
then.
have to start here at application.
An application, the planning board would have to include as part of their decision, do they want to entertain the cul-de-sac versus the turnaround? With the understanding that the cul-de-sac may or may not be in the township's interest after review by all the agencies. And if it is DCA going to allow it?
So we're asking the applicant, please don't come in with a 0 variance application and shove it down everybody's throat. That's what we're asking.
And we understand that, which is why we're pushing for reconsideration to didn't just reapply next day. We know this is a better option, we want to do the better option, that's why we went through this to come in.
Joe, can you do a buy rate with the turnaround versus the cul-de-sac?
No, and I have documentation from the RSIs in their clarification that state existing.
So you wouldn't be a buy rate under either scenario?
Correct.
So what the applicant is saying is, their position is the benefits of the turnaround, whether it be a turnaround or an undersized bowl, the benefits outweigh the detriments of whatever relief
Exactly.
you need from the board.
We're providing something where nothing
Okay.
exists.
Yeah.
Okay, and I would also ask you if you could please meet with the neighbors. Private.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Stern.
Mr. Alzar, so are you, if there's a turnaround, you want a bigger turnaround, or you want the smaller undersized?
Of course, we would like a bigger turnout, that's more safety. That's more
bigger
safety.
turnaround. Okay, good.
Because of the safety.
Fine, Mr. Terry.
Let's be careful with nomenclature. What we're calling a
Cul-de-sac,
turnaround.
cul-de-sac, I'm
Okay.
sorry, cul-de-sac.
Yes.
The new design has a cul-de-sac.
Which is a
You
small.
want the bigger one, or short? Okay.
Well, you can't get the bigger.
But it's hard to do that
So, no,
because.
Mr. Terry.
One at a time, one at a
No,
time.
okay, so good, thank you. Terry, what would have to occur to have a big, supersized?
You have to take off
They
one house.
need to
cul-de-sac?
acquire additional property to fit a larger bowl.
Or they take off one house. Right.
That's
You
possible.
have to reduce the property size. They
So
don't,
if-
and basically they're saying they have a by right application, so why should they reduce anything? That's what they're saying.
Okay, now I understand, thank you.
If he has a by right, you can't ask him to reduce something.
And I guess the reason the township gets involved, because it's a township road, it's not a new development where it's creating a new hall. A new.
Okay, so
Safety
I'm
issue-
closing.
Safety issue can't overrule a by right.
If somebody has a by right application, as far as I know, he has a right to develop his property. And we can, yeah, if we deny, the judge will give it, if it's by right.
But it looks like they're working with you, it looks like
They're trying to work, right? Okay, okay, I would like to move on, we have a full agenda. When,
We carried to September 14th, we would have 5 applications and then 2 correspondence that night.
okay, so, John, can you make the announcement, please?
Public number 2, I'm sorry. Number 2 on tonight's public hearing calendar. SD 2470 Joseph Benton for Byton, 40-52 8th Street, that will be carried to September 14, 2021, 6 o'clock, this meeting hall. There will be no further announcements.
Confirm, meeting's still live?
Yes. Hopefully.
Well, I don't now. See what happens when school opens.
Well, no, but we know.
Possibly we do have another application on Thursday, so later.
Yep.
Yeah, what did we just carry? The other one's the warehouse that we just carried. So yeah, you would be first.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, so let's go on to public hearing.
Do you want to take the correspondence first?
Okay, let's do correspondence. Okay, come on, the correspondence. Okay.
The correspondence?
Yeah, Mr. Renner stepping down on this application.
Mr. Chairman, there's a question about Kicker Shabbos.
Yeah.
Are we going to adopt a resolution on that tonight?
No.
He asked at the very beginning that was carried.
No, only on the.
I told you to confirm. Yeah? pulling any, we're not pulling any fast ones.
We got one resolution is done.
Well, we didn't do the other resolution, right?
More, right?
We didn't do,
We carried three of them to the 14th, September 14th.
what about, Cheddar?
Cheddar Renee Tour was approved.
That was approved.
Yes.
I gotta go back to that, because there was an issue with that. I see Mr. Hirsch's email. He didn't like that 45-day thing, where if the governing body doesn't,
I asked if anybody's any objections, so
I'm sorry, he sent a letter, I somehow missed that.
we're gonna reverse our approval.
Well, we could take out that 45-day thing. I wanna discuss that whenever we get back.
I was on that application.
Which application?
So you just need River Ave 14th?
We can fix that. In other words, Mr. Hirsch said there was an automatic, if the governing body did not respond to the Title 39 thing within 45 days, Mr. Hirsch said, well, why should it just automatically go away? He wanted more time than 45 days.
Okay, you have to repeat this again. If the government does not accept the Title 39, then what?
Let me read his comment.
Title 39 is enforcement by the local.
He sent an email at 4:32, I was just checking the emails, that's how come I was on my way here. I've seen Mr. Shea's email about are we on the record?
Yeah.
Can
I ask why every sentence the last minute?
Well,
It gets so confusing then.
This was worked on up until right before the meeting, but on Cheddar Benatora, Mr. Hirsch said, I've seen Mr. Shea's email about not holding up the resolution deferring to the board concerning how long this request of the township committee would have to remain outstanding. As the time frame, he wants, as for the time frame for the items to be installed, that's the board's discretion. What I understand is the email back to Shea indicating that we provide the resolution within 45 days. He objects to that. He thought they would be deleted with the understanding that the board would come up with time frames. So he wanted the board to,
Okay, so in simple English, what does he want?
he doesn't say how long he wants. You want to accommodate him and say, you know,
45 days,
in the resolution, we changed it to 45 days, that if the governing body doesn't respond to the Title 39, and there was another request within 45
If
days.
the government body does not accept Title 39, then what? Then he has to come back to the board?
No, then he only had to make the request. And he said, well, what happens if they don't respond? And I said, well, we made the request, I think that would be satisfactory, but Hirsch wants it to be, doesn't want that to be satisfied for 45 days, he wants it longer.
I don't understand, they made the request, they did everything they were supposed to do.
Mr. Ackerman, how long does it take?
Yeah,
If somebody gives a request in for the Title 39 for the township to respond?
Whenever the township decides to enforce the Title 39, they could.
Yeah, but if the township ignores it, doesn't respond, he doesn't want to.
But I agree with Ellie, and that's what my thought was, if they make the request, they've done what they have to do.
Okay, so they have to satisfy the board or your office that they made a request to the township.
Okay. Yes, that's the way that's what the board ruled, and that's the way we set up the
That's
resolution.
what the resolution would read.
Yes.
Okay, no problems. Let it go. Okay, we're on to the correspondence.
You can't do correspondence, he went to respond.
It's playing musical chairs there.
In the car, or that's no.
Going back to that other one, there was also a question about the request to make the alleyway one way. I'll address this at the next meeting.
I think that part of the motion was that it was going to be one way, the alleyway. Does it say in the resolution?
Yes.
I remember distinctively that it has to be one way going out to 7th Street. And the gate has to be closed when the school is in session, and when it's not in session, it just opens up. in the morning and afternoon for the kids to go home.
Are we unadopting that resolution? I'm sorry, I was speaking with Mr. Isaacson, so I don't know what we determined.
Don't adopt it, I'll take care of this.
Okay, just don't email up the.
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay.
No,
Proceedable.
no, there will be in a minute.
Nobody wants to
Hey, let's
be
go,
here, guys.
let's go
What's going
fast.
on?
We gotta work very fast.
All right, this is the correspondence for NJ Hand. They had an approval in the most recent phase that included a community building that was 1 story. They'd like to make it 2-story.
Okay, let the record reflect that Mr. stepped down.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just not clear, attorney, there's nothing here that I can't vote on in this house today.
That I don't know.
Okay. Terry, do you have any comments on this?
I don't have any comments, Chairman. I don't know if there's been any design changes per se.
Okay.
Right, good evening, Mr. Chairman. We are,
Please identify yourself for the.
Ira Harris, appearing on behalf of NJ.
Somewhere record everything. Okay.
Ira Harris, appearing on behalf of NJ. Yeah, we are only requesting for correspondence. We had the approval of the community center about 2 years ago. We're looking to add a floor and and put in an unfinished basement. There are no variances, not changing the building at all.
The footprint.
More than one parking from the.
How much parking do you need?
Sorry?
How much parking do you need? Do you have access to it?
The parking was calculated about 2 years ago for the initial approval. It showed 879 spaces necessary for the entire site. And we had at that time 968, about 90 spots extra.
Okay.
And by adding a floor, I mean, the most you can need for a floor is, the square footage is 3,800 square feet. Even if you use the entire floor, you'll need another 38 spaces per floor, so at most.
If you use the entire floor, 3,800? Right, it's 101.
So there's still plenty of parking. There's 90 spaces extra.
Are there any other variances that you're requesting?
We're not requesting any variances. There's no variances. We're just adding the floor and putting it under the basement. 0 variances necessary. That's all that's being.
Mr. Starr.
So I guess this question for you, but also a question for John. We've had, I don't say a lot, but we've had numerous applications via correspondence. And maybe I'm just being slow, but I'm still not understanding what the qualitative distinction between this application under correspondence versus a normal application with notice. I'm not denying the merits, I'm not challenging the merits, I'm questioning the process. So maybe you can both.
Think something that has no variances whatsoever?
Yeah, I don't think there's any site design changes that are currently proposed. Is that correct?
Correct.
You're simply you're taking the existing footprint, adding a floor, and adding an unfinished basement.
Correct.
So
Correct.
the question
No
is,
footprint changes.
So if I'm taking your logic, we wanted to put 10 stories, then that should also be under correspondence?
You need a variance for 10 stories, but to the extent that you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, people do this on correspondence, but adding a story onto a building, I think that's pretty substantial.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. I'm not saying the merit, I'm not challenging the merits of the application. I don't understand why this is under correspondence.
I think your instincts are on point.
Okay, so what the applicant is saying, because you're not changing any footprint of the site, and you're not changing, there's no new variances, you're not changing any footprints.
But you're changing the volume of the building.
You're doubling the volume, and plus you're putting a basement, and what's in the basement?
That's a pretty,
It's not the same one.
what's the square feet we're going from what to what to what?
including the basement.
Each floor is about 3,800 square feet, so you're adding about 3,800 square feet, but again, it's hallways, restrooms, it's community center.
From my
and
perspective,
people don't-
since it's part of the subdivision, I can just tell you when I received it as a correspondence request and when I discussed it, if this were like a site plan for an office building, that would be a different situation than a building that's within the community being designed to service the community that's already been approved. They aren't modifying the number of units. It's certainly still a judgment call, however, it's not a standalone synagogue that they're building by itself. It was part of this larger application. They are modifying just the synagogue within the subdivision.
There's no circulation changes, it's nothing.
Is that its own lot and block now? Is it its own lot subdivision with perfection?
I'm not sure.
No, it's not.
Who's that for?
Yeah.
You've been banned.
One second, you have to be.
Ellie Renner.
That's when I give you first floor, with the house is nothing.
Yes, 140 Coles Way, Ellie Renner, if you don't know. It's not its own lot, it's part of the NJ Hand development, Lakewood Commons Affordable Housing Development. I live there, that's why I have a conflict. We needed a larger community center, it's for us, by us. There's not enough room that we have currently, so I called the planning office to find out we did on this correspondence. There is no new variance. We're currently over, I think, about 90 spots over what we currently need. It's used by us and no one else.
You look awfully similar to that guy who was denying.
I said, do we need you?
We have 90 spots over, we're taking up 38 if we would have needed the first floor. I'm assuming 38 for the basement as well. At least,
There's enough.
Still enough. Are you not concerned as overwhelming parking?
We're not concerned because it's us who use the community center.
It's not open to the public, it's not a public
Not
show.
open to the public, it's just for the residents. It's a lot of residences we have.
Elliot, full capacity right now.
You guys just love giving me a hard time.
No, at full capacity now, how many spots are there?
Right, it's not fully developed, this is the last phase to be developed. Right now, there are empty spots, there's empty spots all over the place. I mean, it was built with more empty spots. There's no problem with parking.
It wasn't an objection, it was really a question, so I stand.
Okay.
Like an objection to me.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, do we have to open this to public correspondence?
No, I mean, of course, the community will need.
Okay, good. Any other board members have any questions?
I don't think it's substantial, especially in the context of a large application.
Okay, so I'll ask for a motion on this application.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Levy moves and we have 2 seconds. Chaim, Mr. Stern, roll call please.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Mr. Sable? Yes. I'm sorry, I have you guys in the wrong order. Mr. Herzl?
Yes.
Mr. Isaacson?
Yes.
And Lee Macker?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's finally get on to the public hearing.
Thank you.
All right, under public hearing, we have SB 2428, which is a major site plan application by Elmwood Village Homeowners Association, located at 2 Tobit Drive, it's for an addition to their existing synagogue.
Okay. Yeah, sure, I'm sorry. Can you
Yes,
say
I
it
think
one
the
more?
stack that you have may be out of order, I apologize, I ran out of time to sort that.
Okay, Terry, when you're ready, you can go through the report.
Block 439, Tobit Drive.
Chairman, I'm reading from our review process.
Okay.
Did you find it, if you want help?
Yeah, it's the second one.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, Terry, please proceed.
Beginning the bottom of page 2 on page 3 under submission waivers. Waivers requested, including traffic, proof of submission, topo contours, and the future within 20 feet, and profiles, EIS, and tree protection management. We recommend granting the waivers for hearing purposes for the 4 reasons stipulated.
Okay, do we have a motion to go on engineer's recommendation?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion, second, all in favor to grant the waivers, aye. Okay, on to zoning.
Continuing on zoning, page 3 and page 4, variance relief includes minimum lot width, front yard setback, building coverage, parking relief, and perimeter light.
Okay.
I believe that's all we need.
No, that's it. Okay, anything else you want to go through, report?
Not this time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good evening, Gerald Klein, with me here on behalf of the applicant, for the Elmwood Village Association. And I just wanted to, I guess, just give a slight overview. This is the Elmwood Village development, which is on Route 9. This is an existing synagogue, it's an existing shul that's been already in use probably for about 12 years or so. And simply, they have indigenous, I guess you could say, expansion from just simply the homeowners in the development. And they're simply looking to expand the footprint of their building, just to give some more space for the people that are there in the development, simply to have where to pray. I did want to introduce Mr. Zeitler, Chesky Zeitler, who some of you may be familiar with. He lives in the development, and he would be able to address many of the factual considerations about the inhabitants, the people that are going to be proposed using it, and what the current uses has been for the last 12 years, and I think that would be helpful to the board as well.
Who's the engineer?
Will Lyons is the engineer on the application as well, and we will be introducing him as well. So I'd like to call Mr. Zeitler as well, just as permission of the board.
Please come to the mic. With the state your name for the record, you have to be upfront.
Husky Cyber, 18 Tover Drive.
Do you swear affirm testimony to be before the board is the whole truth and nothing?
Yes.
Okay, please speak into the mic.
Okay, what we're looking to do is, we have a shul. So we have the shul was built, the development was started in 2006. The shul was built with 2 mikvahs in the basement, a lot of wasted space, and really no ezras nashim. So right now, as everybody got older, we're making, concerts and things like that. We need a place to make simchas and to expand. There's no room in the shul. We're like squeezing it in more and more, and we need to make it as nashim. So we're looking to expand out 35 feet, I think it is, and we're trying to make simple in the basement. It's not going to be rented out. It's not big enough to be rented out. It's specifically
Let me ask you a
for.
question. This is a development?
Yeah.
And the shul is in the development?
Yes.
Okay. How many people live in the whole?
46 homes, and then there's about 6 or 7 right outside that are dotted land.
Okay. But so you're building, the existing shul is 2,700 square feet?
It's 50 by 50, but we lose 10 from the back. It's like 40 by 50, so it's 2,000.
And then you're adding 27, so you're making like 1,200.
Exactly, 27, 22.
That's 2 floors, right? No, can't be 27? So it's 18, no? 35 by 50. It's only 1,800, right? Per floor. It's 1,000, yeah. Okay, so all together, yeah, between both floors, it's 27.
And you only needed 0 parking.
Hey, no one's traveling anywhere, and it's only right.
But that's how much they put on there. Basically, on this shul, how many people come to this shul?
70, 75.
And it's been, nobody comes to cars?
Nobody comes to car. Maybe I'm saying during the week, here and there, some people might come from the enclave, they need a
No,
minimum.
it's 6 parking spaces, and you make a big addition.
I understand, I'm saying, but there's nobody driving.
You have to set that on the record.
What?
Yeah, what's your reasoning for there's no parking?
Because we're not adding any additional people, and we don't have a problem with parking now. I mean, there's plenty of parking if anybody ever drives by, there's always plenty of room to park.
Just to give you some oversight, not that this is dispositive, not that this is dispositive, but just to, for those that are in the know, the Elmwood, I guess you could say, community is a Ashkenaz Minyan. That whole neighborhood, Open Vine, that whole area is not generally coming to that shul. That is not the hotbed of Hasidut, if you will.
I got in Marvel, it was half.
What was that?
I got in Marvel, it was a half hour.
What you said, you have 2 liquids in the basement. Yeah, that's why they want to get rid of that.
He said it's useful space.
Now, as a practical matter, this is for the inhabitants where, I'm not providing testimony, but I have frequented, because I live in the neighborhood as well, and quite frankly, of the 6 or 7 spots that are generally there, I would say 90% of the time, only 3 of them are of use. It's all within walking distance. You can see the development itself is very small. The shul itself is located essentially within the development. It's not like they have to walk long distances. And there is parking also along the streets on the exterior and behind the property on Times Square as well. Yes. All yours.
You swear affirm testimony to give you notice for me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Glenn Lyons, professional engineer, professional planner, office in Lakewood, New Jersey. As I said, the majority of the men walk to the shul, so the 6 parking spaces do provide enough parking for those few people who do drive during the day.
How big is the sanctuary?
That way? That better?
How big is the sanctuary?
The main sanctuary is 1,500, and I believe they're adding 1,000 to it, and then there's the ladies section, which is another 466.
Much bigger. But the main sanctuary is going to be, the final main sanctuary is about 2,500?
Yes.
The numbers on the plans are a little interesting. The numbers on the plans are a little interesting. It says, it says you're adding 1768.
On the, he's looking at the site plan.
Your front set, here it says the main sanctuary is 2,730.
It says you're adding 1768. It's a
Right.
one-story building.
The total of 20.
Correct. It's a one-story building with a basement.
Right.
Yes.
And the 17, you're adding 17, it says proposed extension of 1768. That's including the basement?
No, that's on the first.
And so it's currently 1,000 square feet?
What's the
No,
current
because
square
the
footage?
whole first floor that has stairwells and has the
auxiliary sanctuary.
You need to get
On the north side of our building. So, like I said, it's about 1,000 square feet that they're adding, about 1,700 square feet.
That's in the existing.
The current is 2,700 and you're adding 17.
Right, that's just basic building area.
That's not the main sanctuary. The main sanctuary, the price over here is going to be 2,735. Altogether.
How many parking spots were required originally for 2,700 square foot?
34, right?
Yeah.
34 is,
So 34 is required now.
it was a de minimis variance for that.
So it was 34 was required in the planning board at the time. It was
Approved 6.
what?
Approved 6 parking spaces.
Approved 6, you needed 34, and now we're looking to increase it.
No.
We need 34 now.
We need 34 now.
Before you do this, I want to know when you came in 2006, how many were required? Was 6 the amount?
No, 34 now. I'm trying to do the big one.
There's no cars back then.
So,
That's right.
It's around 25 parking spaces were required then.
Okay.
What we're adding on adds another 9.
Right, so it was
So
25% of the requirement under the ordinance in 2006.
Was
We're not, just want to make, just sure I'm not opining, I just want to be clear. So at the time, in 2006, you basically got approved for 25% of the parking requirements for the size of the building at the time. Now you're not increasing the parking, and you're adding another 1,700, which is about 40%. Is that correct?
that is correct. And as the rabbi had indicated, most everyone walks because it's a very small, it's a very nice community, but it's a very small community. It's almost more trouble to get in your car, drive 1,000 feet, find a place to park, get out, than just walk over in the first place.
Well, come to my house at 7 a.m. on a rainy morning, and I will take you to my shul, and there will be very few walking people and lots of cars. Lots of parking on the street.
I'd like to make a comment. I'm very familiar with this, with this neighborhood. This shul is used for the neighborhood. I mean, I wouldn't say that we should be doing this for a shul on Clifton Avenue, but this shul is used only for the neighborhood. They're missing an amenity that they need a place to worship. It's used for them. They regulate who's going to be in there, and they know that they don't have parking. So,
Right, and the school buses, if there's on-street parking on both sides, and the school bus is trying to go one way, and it's 60 passengers.
I drive that every day.
And are they school?
Yeah, but I went on Portland, because one of my kids' rabbis was there. So I asked someone, how come that park was, there's only a couple of spots, how come I was able to find one of them? So they said, no one parks here because they're scared that when they get there, there's not gonna be a spot, so everybody walks. So they told me.
I'll defer to my esteemed colleagues.
Mr. Stern, I did find the original approval at the time when this was approved as a subdivision with the neighborhood. It was showing as 6 spaces required for the synagogue. It's 6 spaces for both.
It was 6 spaces.
Well, that was the ordinance at the time?
That's the
Or
way
we were
it
just
was-
making it up?
That's the way it was calculated by the applicant.
I didn't draft this on the board.
This was 2006.
See, that's
No, the approval was before.
That's before they.
Yeah, Neil and I approved it.
Oh, there you go.
It seemed right at the time, 6 spots. I mean, red cars.
Okay.
So go through all the variances.
Let me go back to the variance. The lot width variance is an existing variance for our frontage along Elmhurst Boulevard on the north side of the property. That's number 1. Number 2 is, or that's number 2. Number 3 is front setback variance, 19.91 feet, where 30 is required. Again, that's the Elmhurst side of the building. There are 2 site triangles on the property, on each of the northeast and the northwest corners. The building, the steps, nothing encroaches into those site triangle easements. So to get the size building and keep the parking, if we move the building back to get a 30-foot front setback, we lose 11 feet in the back, and then that gets into the parking lot, and we would actually lose the parking, or most of it, if we had to comply in the front. To get the size building that they need for their constituency, we're asking for that 19.91 front setback. There's a small lot coverage variance, 25 is allowed in this zone, 28.79 is proposed, and it's all basically comes from the size of the building that we're trying to build for the community. Again, we've talked pretty much about the parking, and I don't understand. Oh, the perimeter buffer, we don't. It indicates we don't need a perimeter buffer because there's a playground on the west
two questions. Just what the reason for the variance on the record, and is there anything in the report that you don't agree with?
There's a few items in the report to add, add some additional landscaping, closure for the trash, some things like that, which really don't affect the existing building. They've been that way for whatever. It was approved in 2006. It's been that way for 15 years. It's a community shul. If they needed a trash enclosure, they would have built one. So there's a number of the items in here that, are asking for additional or this, that, and the other thing. The shul, is doing what they can with the money they have, and they have all these extra things.
Who picks up the trash right now? Who picks up the trash right now? Maybe no.
The township picks up the trash. We have the regular, residential receptacles that we push to the curb every Tuesday night. I just wanted to add that, I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but we're trying to make this project within ourselves, and out of the 75 people that down there, I think less than 20 of them actually have a secular job. So we really we're really on a tight budget, so whatever.
Actually, the checks are written out by you and what?
That's right. I'm obviously the one that has a secular job.
The other important things, ADA compliance, we're putting in a new ADA ramp. We do have one ADA working space. We are providing 100% stormwater management. We have a recharge system that will take 100% of the water. Everything comes off the building will go and recharge, and nothing goes off-site in anybody else's detention basin, into the county system. It's all handled right on the site.
Are you changing the basement now, the current basement that's there now? Are you proposing any changes to the current basement?
To the current basement, we're not taking away any of the choice for those who want to use it. Right, no, I know, even though they made their own now, but there is a lot of open space. Right when you come in, that whole room over there is empty. So we want to try to put that as part of the mikveh and then use the back end of the mikveh as the kitchen.
You don't walk in from the side, right, from the playground, the entrance?
No, the entrance will be from either Elmhurst. The entrance to it, to the mikveh, to the question.
You have to have multiple entrances.
Right.
So there's an
What's
entrance.
the purpose of this staircase? This is gonna go down to the basement.
This goes down to the basement. This goes into the existing bed. There's another access to the basement, through this door, to the stairwell,
We're opening a new door over here now.
No, that's an existing door.
Can we put sidewalk here or is it air conditioning? And this is not in the park?
Going right along the thing, right along the street. Maybe because they look at
No, it's not. Man, it's so nice.
Guys, try to use the mics, please.
Yeah, they want to hit the
To condense the conversation, Mr. Sable was asking if we could put an additional sidewalk on the west side of the building to connect the parking lot to the entrance where the mikveh is. There's, I believe there's air conditioning equipment there, and there's existing mature trees that we would have to cut down that buffer to the playground. So we have plenty of sidewalk around the front. There's also an entrance at the front left-hand corner.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
so is no simcha hall now, but there will be going forward?
Right now, whenever anybody has to make a simcha, they can either use the shul just for the kiddush, and then the suda has to be in their house, or they can pay $15,000 to $20,000 and use guacamole, or they can pay $10,000 to $15,000.
I think we just want to clarify.
Yeah, no,
We're
right.
talking about a Shabbos Kiddush, they're not talking about making a simple baptism in the hall.
Right. We're not making any event that wouldn't have been held
A
up.
bris in the morning, they may make
So bris in the morning, we're making the shul now. Anything that would have been, in other words, we're not adding on any additional people or any additional events. It's just,
It's not open to the public.
It's not open to the public, it's only for the members of the people who are there now. The problem is that the Rav doesn't like that people use the dispensary to pursue this, so he stopped it. And so for a mitzvah, it wasn't such a big deal because how many people do you have? But now people started making consonants, it became a big problem. So either they go, people literally go make Shavuos and somewhere else, or they, one guy, it became a very big problem, so. What? But Shabbos, I'm talking about Shabbos kids. It's too small, so 1,800 square feet, you can't put, yeah, I'm saying. Yeah, it's not enough to make a night, it's not enough to make a weekday, but to have, but to make a suit, to make a kiddush.
Okay, any other questions from any board members?
No, I just want to tell Chesky that he was on the board that he knows exactly what he just did to whoever's taking the minutes. You know exactly what you just did to whoever's taking the minutes.
I got it.
Thanks, man.
When I was on the board, Michael made them type and, what are they, like, the quotes for nine?
And then we blame everything on John.
Okay, I will open to the public. Anybody from the public like to be heard on this application? Seeing no one, we'll close it to the public.
Very request from the township, not to, around Marlon and Elmhurst, just that area. I'm asking the land. Welcome, yeah, yeah, I think it's a good idea, just on Elmhurst. So whatever happens,
Okay, I will ask for a motion on this application.
I'll make a motion to approve it with the condition of, requesting from the township, hoping Mr. Ackerman will approve it, no parking on Elmhurst.
And Mr. Sable moves, we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Renner seconds, roll call, please.
Mr. Sable?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Mr. Herzl?
Yes.
Mr. Renner?
Yes.
And Mr. Isaac?
Yes.
Mr. Ackerman?
On the vote.
Okay. Let's go on to the next.
Application SB 2414.
Shh, please leave quietly.
SB 2414 made by Casanova Today LLC. It's a major site plan for a mixed-use building on River Avenue. The board did hear this. The board heard the start of this application. We did have a full board that night, except for Mr. Ackerman. I believe the board had sent the applicant away and directed them to seek DOT's input before they returned for the board's.
We have no objection to starting over now the full board, because we have the DOT's information, we can now provide all that, so we have no objection.
You do the whole application 5 minutes?
Seven, because DOT.
Okay. They tell you.
Yeah, it makes life easier. It's also been a while, and also I did provide, I believe I provided new notice. I did provide new notice for this application.
Yep.
It started off as a virtual, so make it cleaner, we're happy to start it over.
Just for the record, Casanova means a new home, correct? And this is commercial.
I mean, go through the report.
Sure. No, I'm clarifying.
Recap.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to read from our April 28th review, under submission waivers on page 2 on page 3. Include a traffic study from the submission of county planning board, topo contours, man-made features within 200 feet, plans and profiles, EIS. We support the waivers for hearing purposes, for reasons stipulated.
We have motion on engineer's recommendation. Yes. Mr. Sable moved. Second. Mr. Renner seconds. All in favor, aye. Okay, on to zoning.
All right, now zoning, we talked about it the last hearing, so we're going to hear it again today. The uses we believe are permitted, throughout our testimony. We had identified at the time that various relief may be necessary regarding on-street parking spaces, specifically the 2 proposed aisles. The applicant will address that. Parking setback variance from center line to Route 9, that'll have to be addressed, as well as testimony testimony as to existing and proposed signage, and whether any relief is necessary. And then finally, under design waivers, buffer relief is required. As indicated, design waivers also required with respect to street trees, shade tree, utilities along the private scope drive frontage, and the width of the access driveway versus 30-foot township maximum. I believe that's all the relief.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Adam Tucker, on behalf of the applicant. As Terry indicated, this is a mixed-use application for office and retail building. We're not seeking full variances. For their testimony regarding parking and waivers, but this is a nice rateable along Route 9. The last year, again, I know we're starting over, there was some question regarding traffic in the DOT. The board asked us to please go meet with the DOT to discuss what they would like to see here, because we didn't want to have to come back before the board. We've done that. Brian will provide the testimony in a moment. At this time, if I can have Mr. Flannery sworn in, and also Brian has already marked the exhibits, and I'll just walk you through as he's going through each one.
You swear affirm testimony I gave you before this board will be the truth, all of it, and nothing but the truth.
I do. Brian Flannery, Jackson, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and professional planner. I have 4 exhibits marked this evening. A1 is a copy of the tax map showing the 2 subject lots on Route 9 where we're proposing to redevelop this site. A2 is the aerial exhibit of the which was submitted with the application. A3 is a new layout plan. The board at the last hearing was concerned that we only had 1 entrance, and the traffic engineer was here at that time, and he indicated that per the New Jersey DOT design manual, only 1 entrance would be allowed. At the board's request, a meeting was set up with the DOT, and the applicant and Scott Kennel sat down with the DOT and said the planning board would like 2 entrances on the site. We know it's contrary to your design manual, but it's safer and it's better. And the DOT said, remarkably, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's A3, shows the 2 entrances. There's 1 entrance in and 1 entrance out.
Is that history made?
That is history made. And hopefully it's a new thing for the DOT.
Happened, right?
Yes. We got a memo from them.
Congratulations.
And yes. So
at least we're doing something right.
Yes. Well, it's good that there's common sense there. As I indicated, I was employed there many years ago, and as you walked in the building, they made you check your common sense at the door. So this is good. Not everything that goes on in the world is good, but this is good. Okay, A4 is a copy of a plan which shows, one of the comments in the report is that we have a drive aisle for access to some of the parking, which is in the desired typical section. A4 is a plan which shows if at any point in the future, DOT actually widened the road and needed that whole desired typical section, the parking lot could be restriped to still have 145 parking spaces, which is what is required based on the proposed development.
Which one do we have? No, which exhibit do we have? Which one is this? With the parking.
This is A3. Joey, was A4 submitted?
Yes, we have there's the 1 page, and then there's the big one.
A4 and A4 are new revised.
Mental numbers for Park Road.
Let's clarify these 2 again.
A3 is the new plan based on meeting with the DOT that shows a northerly entrance in and a southerly entrance out. A4 is a plan, and there was a plan previously submitted which showed redoing the parking lot, and basically redoing of the parking lot, moved the parking over.
Sorry, we don't have none of these. This is a 5th one. Brian.
This is showing the
all in and out.
In and out, both of them.
I don't think that.
both in and out, both in and out.
Yeah, so that's good.
That was the old plan.
You have a-
This is the new old one,
In
the old one.
in the stack from lines, you have a full set of plans, and then there's a sheet 3 by itself, and that shows the two.
This one.
3 of 19.
Right, that you show both in and outs, on both sides, they're not coordinated.
You have 3 of 8. I only have 1.
I have 18.
Sorry.
I have like 600 pages.
Right, because that, you see what we go through it?
Most of them are more or less.
We like both sides. Both in and both out. But it's not much, no. Let's do it out, it's not no. That'd be a good idea.
Can you know which one we're voting on? Chairman, I honestly have no idea. For my clarification, fortunately, I don't know. The plan is one way in, one way out.
That is correct.
How was the circulation? Did the northerly is in?
The northerly is in, the southerly is out.
Okay, so you have counterclockwise circulation.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And that is what's been reviewed and approved by the DOT. I wish we didn't see it.
This is double, and this is in
This is much better plan.
That's much better.
I like the feeling.
This is 100 years.
I already know who the next meeting is, but I'm gonna email them now, ask them.
Terry,
to copy it, right?
Terry, did you review the most current plan?
I just got it.
About 3 seconds after you did it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the application as far as the building and setbacks and variance, and with no variances, all that stuff has not changed. The only thing that has changed is we now added the second access or exit, which the board had asked for previously.
Which one's this with the double, what, going in now?
Do it.
Why the difference? I'm trying to understand why. Does that make sense? Is there a reason to have 2 lanes in? So you don't.
Sure, that's it.
We're coming into a 24-foot wide aisle. So, I mean, if the board wanted, we could certainly make it smaller. The DOT likes to have more access coming in so the vehicles can get off.
No, but I like the idea that it's properly sized, and I'd rather have the width. It's also good if you have emergency, if you have an emergency vehicle that has to make that turn. I like the idea of the wider entries. Properly sized.
I understand the one entry. I understand why there were 2 areas. It wasn't just the one big arrow. So I was like, you made it so there were 2 places coming in.
Mr. Johnson, when you would agree to conditional approval to one painted arrow?
That's mostly accepted.
I recommend that we call this the smuggler interior arrow.
They go one for downhill.
The last goes a propel,
You want to smuggle?
Yes, yes. Chairman, I think the concept itself is good. I like this better than the current plans.
Okay, so I just want to go be clear for the record, what plan we're voting on.
A3 is the new layout plan.
And that provides for the northerly entrance on Route 9 is an entrance only, and it will be properly signed to designate that. And the southerly access point is for egress only. And that will also be properly signed, and during resolution compliance, the board engineer will make sure that
We don't have such a plan.
Correct. I have it. I'm only with the, I'm Brian.
If we vote on it now, we need that plan for the record.
I just emailed their office to ask for digital copies.
Well, why couldn't we get this? It's not our fault, it's your fault.
It was my understanding that what exhibits were submitted to the board.
And this is not even final, because when and if they're gonna widen Route 9, this is going away half of it. So, I'm serious, that's what happened before, as a backup, and then 85 and 25 is Route 9. What?
It said why we were that.
We don't know.
You gotta believe it.
Okay. Okay, after you clarify the confusion, let's go through the report.
Okay.
Are there any variances?
No variances are required. Going through the report,
You can't agree with the report.
We need to clarify some items that
Yes.
was raised.
So the first item in the report is clarifying testimony that they're all permitted uses. It's the second and third floor are all general office, which is a permitted use. The first floor is retail, also a permitted use. With respect to the parking, as you can see on A3, there's an access drive that's within the desired typical section. I have another plan that was submitted previously as an exhibit.
It's getting more confusing.
Well, this one makes it easier to see how the restriping would be, because it's done in red. So the rear area of the site provides more maneuverability, but less parking. If the DOT came along, and just so everybody's aware, Mr. Franklin told us that the DOT came to him in 1967 and said they're going to widen Route 9.
It was actually some sort of press release, I think, Mr. Coles, the mayor, released a few weeks ago about the Route 9, so it's happening, or closer than 1966.
Well, what's happening is intersection improvements and minor things that don't impact us at all. In order to get to the point where they would need that desired typical section, the desired typical section is something that's for the unforeseeable future. We could do 2 lanes in each direction with shoulders and still not need to revise this. So my opinion is that you're never going to see that plan. I know I'll never see it because I'm 68. Mr. Franklin never saw anything because in 67 they asked him about widening it and they talked about it, and all they've done is talk about it. My understanding is that they are going to do intersection improvements, they are going to do minor projects, but they're not acquiring the right-of-way now to do a full 2 lanes in each direction.
Why don't we do this now?
Because the other layout is better. So why? Because the traffic movements are easier, the parking is easier, and we're using 12 feet of pavement in a desired typical section that they're, in my opinion, are never going to use. They can make 2 lanes in each direction with a center turning aisle in the right-of-way that they have. The DOT doesn't.
Parking would be less.
It would be 4 parking spaces less,
So
and still
4
conform.
parking spaces less.
4 parking spaces, but easier parking spaces. And we know the Lakewood drivers, you're better off making the parking spaces easier so that you don't have conflicts.
And just to be clear, while we can do it today, as Brian indicated, this is a better flow for traffic and for parking. Should it ever expand, and they widen all the way to where the typical requirement they ask for, we're in agreement. We will reconfigure the parking lot, it'll be at our cost, and we lose more parking spaces.
Nothing changes besides reconfiguring the
Right.
driveway. No building, no curbs, nothing to change.
What would happen is the curb here would be moved back from where it was proposed to the desired typical section.
So how many feet would that go back? More than 9 feet?
12 feet. 12 feet.
Through the chair, because I understand Mr. Sable's concern, I just want to put it into context a little bit. In 2013, at the end of the year, I was called by the state, and they told me that what they're planning on doing now is redoing the intersections and everything. They said that they were going to do it as at the beginning of 2014. That was their schedule, to do it towards the beginning of spring of 2014. Which would have been 7 years ago, and this is a small project. And then,
the wrong person.
and then we sat in meetings, myself and Committee on Literacy. We sat in monthly meetings for 2 years to discuss exactly. They decided that they want local input, so we sat for 2 years. Every month we went to discuss details together with Tom's River. And in end of 2015, they said, okay, we're ready to roll. We're ready to put a shovel to the ground. So now, for this small project, 6 years later, they're saying we're ready to put a shovel to the ground, which we still haven't seen that shovel yet. So a larger project like Route 9, even if they decided to do that between property acquisition and everything, talking about 10, 15 years. So that's, and what the applicant's saying is, let us use the property we want, because at a minimum, they'll get use out of it for 10 or 15 years, and possibly for many more years. Hopefully not. But that's the timelines for the state are always there. I can say that widening Route 9, but
and my testimony
Right, for emergencies, yeah, we're widening.
And my testimony is they can widen it to 2 lanes in each direction without impacting this property. It's only if they're gonna do 3 lanes in each direction, where then they're gonna need this, and
3 lanes in
You believe that this will work, even if they widen, unless
They presented an alternate design where I think you're moving everything in, if I remember correctly, you have parallel spaces.
yes,
along the
and
adjacent
that's why I put up the one that's shown in red. The only difference between that and A4 is it doesn't show the 2 separate driveways, but it's the same concept. We make a one-way with parallel parking, and then in the rear of the site, we orient the parking differently.
Yes,
How would you put that in?
it works with 4 less spaces.
With 4 less spaces.
How do you put that in a resolution? Is it on one, and once you do that, this is gonna change?
It doesn't need to be in a resolution. What happens is the DOT comes along and they says, we need this property.
And you don't have a choice.
Right, you have no choice, and the applicant restripes it to have sufficient parking.
So we're not voting, if we're approving, we're not approving,
No,
we're approving this.
no, the purpose of A4 is to show you that we can still have 145 spaces, if the state comes in and takes all the land to the desired.
You have to restripe it to be conforming with parking.
Yes. But the applicant feels 149 nicer spaces are better for if I was gonna estimate, I'd say it's 80 to 100 years before, that would happen.
Okay. Is there anything, let's go back to the report.
Okay, so continuing the report, that was with respect to the parking, we required no relief for parking. Item 3 in the report is again with respect to the parking setback from the desired typical section. Item 4 is with respect to signage, and my testimony is that the signage will comply. We're not asking for any relief with respect to signage.
So why is it here?
Because the applicant didn't submit details of the sign, because he doesn't know who the tenants are at this point.
But the signage is too close to Route 9, that's what it says? To River Avenue, it's 2 feet.
It says it's unclear whether any signage variances will be required. The plan shows an existing sign located 2 feet from River Avenue, so that's an existing sign. Obviously, we're gonna try to keep it.
With the old building that's not there anymore.
But
Nothing.
yeah, but it's an existing sign.
The whole small house, a commercial. No. It's like literally on Route 9, especially when you do a curve, yeah, we gotta really.
So signage will comply. Yeah, I agree. Any signage would comply.
Next.
Any new signs?
Yes. Then we get to design waivers.
They're just gonna fix up the current sign.
No, we moved the current sign,
Sorry.
We're moving the existing sign.
So we're not getting any variance for sign.
That's what they said? Okay, next.
Buffer relief, 25 feet on both sides. If you look at the A2, the aerial, we're next to 2 commercial buildings, and we're providing planting and fences, so we feel we meet the intent of it. There's an indication, you can see on the tax map, Toba Drive terminates at the back, which would require street trees or stuff. We're providing a buffer there, we're not treating it as a street. The 36-foot wide access drive, it exceeds the 30 feet per the ordinance. I'll testify again, I think the ordinance needs to be changed to allow for safer entrances, and standards that make sense. 30 feet makes sense for certain kind of businesses. For this kind of radial, it's a larger entrance.
Let's go back to this, I just had an issue with that, too wide, maybe we can address it now.
What the applicant will agree to is the Scott Kennel will work with the state and see what's the minimum they would accept on the minimum width, and we'll reduce it, so the 36 would be the most, and we'll make it as narrow as the DOT.
Well, what's happening is 2 cars, we get it.
What's wrong with the stripe?
Maybe a certain island,
The problem is the emergency, we can put an island in the middle. The emergency
Yeah, if we put an island in the middle, it more gives the impression that you can come in and go out there.
can we eliminate no left turns in, meaning make it on an angle, so it's only
The-
right
the-
in?
The DOT wants the left turns in, because if you don't have left turns in, that means people are gonna go down somewhere else and make turns and get creative.
Better than making a left turn on Route 9.
I think any, sensible driver would not make the left turn on Route 9.
Lakewood.
Brian, could it be striped in the two separate lanes?
We could stripe it as two separate lanes, we could stripe it so that it's one lane coming in.
Mr. Atkin, what do you think, should make it on an angle or only right in, without the DOT? We already have your, we can do whatever we want with that.
No, it's on back.
Again, I want 2 hours, that's what I want.
No, we can get somehow a right in only on the curb and make it wide enough so emergency vehicle to get in.
We had that on Cedar Bridge, where people weren't able to make a left sometimes, and they would go into the fire station. Well, not because the left was illegal, just because there was a short light and people wanted to get to the light. The only way was to make a right and make a left into the fire station, or make a left into high urgent care, or some other wacky left turn. So people do silly
You
things.
know, a designated left turn, I mean, we always the county,
People
so
say
you
that-
can move it up, and you can make a left turn, a left
The
turn.
state wants a left turn in, how are we denying?
We didn't want to see that we got this.
I don't think Brian wants to go.
We have good luck on this one.
Yeah, I don't think we wanna push our luck though.
Can we do a left turn, if we make it wide enough, if we move it in the parking lot, we have extra space to make an extra left turn turning lane.
But the entrance that's shown is wide enough to have a left, turning
We
lane.
have one north and one south currently. Can we add a left on Route 9? I know it's the state highway.
Another access? No.
If we make it wide now, because you have the space here.
But the DOT's design manual says only one on a lot of this way. We went to them and explained that the planning board and common sense says we should have 2, one in and one out. There's no way they're gonna let us have 3.
No, it's on Route 9. I'm asking.
It was
If
a
we can
center turning
create
lane on
a center
A
turning lane.
center turning lane on Route 9?
We have no control over it.
Right.
It's DOT and.
Brian said maybe 2 years is not.
I think if we go back to them, and we're asking, we're giving you the space.
We'll send a letter, I'll request it.
We have the space. We'll create a new sidewalk, new curb.
Okay, Brian, continue.
Mr. Chairman, you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
We'll make a left turn going north into this property.
I'll turn it.
7 lanes.
I'll turn it, yes.
Get us record if you want to, you can get sworn in.
You swear from testimony you give before this board with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I can do Joshua Street, Road Lines Engineering, Lakewood, New Jersey. I was on the phone call with the DOT. It was a very interesting phone call. So first of all, they're very much opposed minimizing turns. They want people to go as quickly to wherever they have to go as quickly as possible. They don't want people doing what Committeeman Ackman was saying, is using those driveways, using that. They also said, as far as this, the reason why they're going to allow us to have 2, one in and one out separate, the reviewer who currently has this jurisdiction in this area said, in my view, that's one entrance. Even though you're doing 2, I consider that since you're doing 1 in and 1 out, even though you're separating it, I see that as 1. So he's like, because it makes sense, he's allowing to have some sort of deviation. We have no problem requesting a turning lane in from Route 9, but as long as it's not subject to anything, because we'll request it. I'm happy to request it. I can't.
Don't object a gift. We're giving them a gift.
It's all about the future plans and future striping plans and space on the pavement space. They're not gonna, for us, for the applicant, it would be a great thing to get it. It's a wonderful thing, he's right here.
And the question is, we have to give up more space. I mean,
we have space to give. We have space to give. That's not the issue. The question is if they want, the DOT looks at it. We had a great meeting. For some reason, the guy said, yeah, I view this as 1 entrance, so that's what we split it to 2.
Okay,
It was
so we can
weird.
either do a left turn lane, or make it an angle, nickel right in. That, will they agree to that, at least?
I'm happy to ask for the turning lane. I don't, angling and all that, again, so wants to go shopping, they're just going to go to the next development to Gourmet, whatever it's called, Gourmet, whatever it's called, and turn around and come back. And then
But having a backup over the Chestnut is also an option. True. So, you know what's going on in Lakewood, this is gonna create a big mess. And that side of town, that's not that yet.
And even if you make a turning lane,
Yeah.
you can't get one
Have
good
to
cars
use
on
cars.
it.
I'll push very strongly to get a turning lane. I can strongly request.
Oh, it's Indian, you know.
Okay, Brian, please continue.
Looking through the report, one of the things I wanted to indicate is that the plan doesn't show these stable sidewalks, but we will add these sidewalks from the Route 9 sidewalk to the building.
Thank you.
So this pedestrian access. On both sides.
Both sides.
Yes.
Stable sidewalks by definition.
Both sides.
So we have a Procel map and a Sable sidewalks.
Not for me, it's machinery, it's not, it's pedestrian, I have a car.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
Well, it helps us all out too, because if people don't get hit, they, you know,
If the
small,
snow is just
yeah,
not-
you-
We got the bedtime.
Why some of the streets on the outside of the building, it's beautiful, can you put sidewalks there?
No, the grading was the grading.
You can't?
Yeah, no.
Hmm.
The grade, that side, the grading drops significantly.
Okay, shh, Brian,
And
please.
then the only other thing in the report is all the fees that the applicant will be.
That you agree to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Just quickly to go through, because we are asking for some relief, the master plan 2017, the vision statements encourage, on page 7, encourage development and redevelopment based on smart growth planning principles. It's my testimony that this does this. The master plan strategies encourage future growth and development. The town is gradable based, this does this. The municipal land use law, JSA 40:55D2 of the Act, encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use and development of all lands in the state, in a manner which will promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. My testimony is this.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any board members?
And just put sidewalks from top to bottom, right?
Yeah.
Both sides, not,
Yeah.
because it's not connecting.
Okay, I would open to the public. Anybody from the public like to be heard in this application? Seeing none, we'll close to the public. I want to ask for a motion on this application.
I'll make a motion to approve this application as presented with begging the town, DOT to make a left turning lane going north.
And adding the sidewalks.
Right, and also this, I should have asked before, I guess, to put in the resolution now, no medical devices, so that's require additional parking.
Okay.
The same thing, no daycare.
And I did testify that there's no medical.
Right. No medical, no daycare for schools, and.
No simple.
Bottom of the.
Okay, Mr. Randall seconds. Roll call.
Mr. Sable?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Mr. Herzl?
Yes.
Mr. Brenner?
Yes.
And
Mr.
we're
Isaacson?
on A3, that's what you're approving, nothing else.
Mr. Isaacson?
Yes.
And Tony Mann?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Jackson. We have to label that to know which one it is.
If you have, it's gonna be emailed over to Ally. If you want to take a picture, I will.
It was actually emailed over.
Did you go with it to make sure it was right?
I did not. I'm a trusting soul.
Alright, our next application is SB 2486. It's a minor subdivision to create 2 lots from 1 on 14.
Okay, Mr. Stable, Mr. Renner is stepping down this one. And Terry, will you ready? Please go through the report.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to be reading from, I'm reading from July 19th.
What is OCY 590? OCY?
That's the applicant's name, the LLC name.
OCY?
Like we have Casanova, Casanova, and this one.
I thought it was one of your numbers. Okay, I'm sorry, Terry.
That's all right. I'm reading from the July 9 review. And looking under relief, it's within the R12. Relief includes a side yard setback variance for new lot 56.4. Proposed 60 lot 5602 has frontage on the outside of Sharp Pine Park Avenue. Recommend approval, certain condition upon restricting access or providing a driveway that has been added, indicating that lot 56 and 2 will be provided with a turnaround. We recommend that if board approval is granted, the restriction be included on the minor subdivision plan to be filed. That's it under zoning. Under design waivers, design waivers required for proposing a side lot line that's not perpendicular to the right-of-way, which the board has acted upon in the past. The plan, as currently proposed, does not propose street limits. That's all we need here.
Mr. Jim, please stand.
But I have the time to correct you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be up the applicant. Okay, no, please. Never mind. As Terry indicated, we have approximately 2 acres, fronts on 14th Street and then Warren Street, goes through the street. With the subdividing into 3 conforming lots, we have one lot as 25, we have one side yard setback where 25 feet is required, we have 20 feet. Otherwise, it's a fully conforming application. Glenn will give some testimony in a minute, just like the
Side setback, you need 25 feet. Side setback, you need 25 feet. Together.
Right, so we have 20. There was a note in the report, Martin Street, there is a sharp curve, and for safety purposes, the applicants agreed that any future house will have a driveway, so they won't have to back out on If I can have Mr. Lyons come in, I'm glad to ask you to do it.
Just from testimony that we can put it forward to the truth, I'll look at the map.
I do. I'm professional engineer, professional planner.
Mr. Chairman, you accept Mr. Lyons' question? Whether you're marking the exhibit A1, or what you call it out?
This is the minor subdivision plan, or the remodel minor subdivision.
Please go through the report. Explain the plan.
Yes, as indicated, we're requesting one setback for a combined side yard of 20 feet where 25 is required on lot 56.02. The owner would like to be able to put a larger house. The 10 feet is, providing the required 10 feet, because we don't have the combination on one side, would be 15. The east side of these lots back up to the rear of the homes on Willow Court, so there is, we're in their rear yard, so I don't feel there's going to be a real impact on the adjacent property owners. The other side is part of the subdivision, so whoever buys the other lot will also know to be a house 10 feet off his property line. With regard to the item number 3, they're over on Martin Street and Pine Willow.
The big one has frontage to which street?
That's what we're talking about.
This is an existing 90-degree bend in the road. This lot will have frontage on that bend.
That's not a variance?
No.
You don't have normal width in front of it?
We have a meeting criteria, just the engineer's report raised an issue that it is a sharp bend, and so we asked us to address that, so we put on any future development of that lot would be a driveway, so you don't have to back out.
Which frontage do you need? What is it, an R12?
This is an R12.
So you need 98 frontage?
Now, I can see where the confusion is. On the subdivision plan, it says lot width, parentheses, frontage showing the requirement. Typically, our ordinance doesn't have a frontage requirement, it has a width requirement, which is usually measured at the front yard setback. So the plans are just written to see.
Right, and the front property lines are total over 100 feet. So even if it was,
Which part is the front? This whole piece?
as if you're on a bend in the road.
You can create a front that's your front.
Yeah. Could be the same as if it was a small curve in the corner here. It's just the way it was drawn when they did the original subdivision.
And you can combine both of them, both angles to create one.
Yes, and as Ali said,
Very useful.
Say it again, Chairman, sir.
What's the frontage to that property?
The back one, 56, go to.
Yeah, out of all the frontages I've ever heard, you just take like one leg.
That's a good question. You're talking about the lot in the rear, the frontage being off of Hyde Park. Isn't frontage defined off of the setback?
There's a lot width requirement in the zone.
Right.
We accidentally put frontage.
Okay.
There is no frontage requirement
Okay.
in the zone. That's why you're on a
So this is an
cul-de-sac.
academic question.
Correct.
Okay.
It's just that the concern in the letter is that because of this bend in the road, Terry wants the cars to come out head first.
That's not a bulk issue, that's a safety issue, making sure that when they develop it properly, there'll be an on-site turn lane.
Technically, if the property's wide enough, I could have 10 feet of frontage to a certain street.
Yeah, if it were a triangular piece, yes, we see that a lot.
Or with flag lots, you have
I know.
It's what?
a kind of giving lot shape like this.
Yes.
Right.
You're saying even though it's 10 feet over here in the front, you can go in. It's wider than that.
As long as.
Because what happened on cul-de-sacs, you have like very, very narrow frontage because of the circle.
I mean, I suppose if we couldn't fit a driveway, if it were 4 feet wide, that probably wouldn't work access.
So technically, a regular driveway gives you frontage to the street.
We used to do that with flag lots, but my
Driveways for a driveway.
Some towns have a specific frontage requirement, this town does not. It
Meaning
would
from the
only have-
front, how far the
No,
house.
frontage would be the amount of feet along the right of way.
Correct.
Lakewood doesn't have a frontage requirement, as far as I know, in any of the zones.
It's
No,
in the
they just
middle
have
of
a
the right.
width requirement, which is not measured at the frontage. It's defined in the ordinance as being measured at a certain percentage back based on the depth of the property.
Right. The lot width is measured at the front setback line.
Which is 30
And in
feet.
this
30
case,
feet back.
you're right.
I apologize.
Frontage.
We have a new draftsman who came from somewhere where they use the word frontage all the time. I missed this one. I will, we're gonna bring him in next month and he can. But that's, I apologize. My plan created the confusion. There is no frontage, it's lot width, and lot width is measured back at the setback line.
Well, I'm sorry, is there an idea for how this house is going to sit on this lot?
It's a tremendous lot.
I know, I'm just.
No, the owner of the lot is retaining that lot and selling one of the front two lots for people to build.
Does he have an idea of what he's doing?
At this point, he has no plans for that piece of property.
What's the subdivision?
He's
gonna be back and you can tell me, I think they're gonna.
You're not on the record.
I'm not on the record anyway, I'm on the record. I think they're gonna be.
So just get it, get it done.
Oh,
You already was.
I wasn't from, I don't.
On this one?
John took me to the eyes.
Where is John?
Did you work from testimony before this board?
I do. I believe the contract, the person's gonna be purchasing the lot. They want us to actually continue the road, dedicate some road to the town, make it a safer intersection, and then do 2 lots. But it's not set yet. For now, it's gonna be like this, and most probably it'll continue down to safe 2 lots.
How wide do you do
Gorgeous.
it? Regular road?
Dead end, regular dead end, that's down the line.
Just to be clear, and then make 2 more lots. Just to be clear, we've already agreed to make sure that the driveway is going to be access, it'll be in and out. So there is no, that's
Adam, I like that plan. Continue the road, you have normal frontage to a property.
we're going on an application that no one's seen, and we don't have.
We did
see it, we did see it though.
I can see this on the page. On a, as an R12, you have over an acre, You split it, you have a half an acre, it's tremendous.
Yes.
What do you do now already? Whatever.
Josh, please stop talking.
So,
I'm happy I came.
You're just right.
Why should more often? This one always.
as far as the rest of what you're doing on block 2505, lot 49, is where it becomes a frontage. If you add the road.
Yeah, that's you.
That's fine.
I'm not nervous.
We'll address that at the house.
I think it's a great in the future.
Well, we corner lot anyway, because the house on that lot, and facing, Pine Park Avenue.
Just to finish up, I've reviewed the rest of the letter. We have no,
Anything you don't agree with?
nothing we object to in the rest of the letter.
It looks like any neighbors, yeah.
You have any questions from any board members?
I just have,
Any sidewalks all over, right?
yes, we are. They're shown on the improvement plan.
On 14, the Martin.
Now, or when you just build it back?
No, we put them in now. We're not asking for a waiver of sidewalks and curbs on that corner.
But can you,
Even if one of the lots gets built, they don't want to.
Right. And that'll be by lot.
Glenn, just to clarify the record, can you tell us what lot number and double check what lot number the side setback variance is on? I think you said
5604.
I believe you said 5602. Okay, thank you.
5604.
Thank you.
When did they put the sidewalk in? When they built, correct? When they built individual in lot, when they built, they get a sidewalk.
14th Street, we have it already, and,
You grew up in that area.
right there.
Right?
Another street.
Tom was right at us. Open up to the public. Anybody from the public like to be heard in this application?
Design.
See, we'll close to the public, and I will ask for a motion to accept.
Motion to approve that.
Okay, Mr. Sage moves. Mr. Ackerman, second. Okay, roll call.
We'll go that way. Maybe an accident.
Yeah, I sat here, so it
Yeah,
should be
you want to
last.
go first.
Yes.
Mr. Isaacson.
Yes.
Mr. Herzl.
Yes.
Mr. Sable.
Yes.
Mr. Stern's gone.
Oh, you-
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
I couldn't see you.
Don't say that.
Mr. Stern. Thank you.
Approve the minutes, approve the bill.
Okay, now, 1 second.
Mr. Summerstein,
Oh,
you've waited all night, like 2 times.
Yeah, so,
Okay, for the record, put your name on the record.
Sure.
The first? Of course. Okay, basically, Mr. Secretary.
Hi, Summerstein.
So she's here for the first office, she had some issues with the
She's concerned
resolution.
that she's concerned that the minutes do not reflect all the conditions, and that the minutes are inaccurate. She's concerned that the board adopts the minutes, then the minutes will not reflect everything.
Okay, and I think Ally told me today that the minutes are not verbatim and they're not accurate. You have to rely more on the resolution with that.
Correct, and if the board has things that they feel are missing or are reflected incorrectly in the minutes, then the board can certainly make recommendations to correct those.
But we're not doing that resolution tonight, right?
We did not do the resolution,
So what we're going to do is my office is going to listen to the tape, and we're going to make comprehensive.
Can I just make a suggestion?
So we can amend the minutes tonight with whatever we find.
The
That's for you,
WebEx
Mrs.
is off.
Summerstein, because
Thank
we
you.
like you.
What? I know. Thank you.
The neighbor cars as well.
WebEx is offering like $15 a month to have transcription done.
I don't think they can listen to Yiddish. I don't think they can, the audio is pretty low.
Was looks to do?
we don't use WebEx anymore though. WebEx was the program we used for our Zoom meetings.
Right.
So, but we're videoing it anyhow, so, I mean, so simple.
What was your,
Look,
Zero and not the three most missing.
Okay, I worked very hard on my speech, and I wanted it in there for perpetuity, everything that went on when I was
All right,
at the
why
light.
don't you do this? Why don't you send us a memo with, the things that you believe are missing?
I'll do that.
So this way we don't have to go through.
And we'll double check it.
We'll double check it.
Are you getting my emails? Like,
I am.
they come to you.
The motion was that her recommendation on her letter is part of the motion.
It was in the.
That was in the original motion, that whatever something's letter.
She's asking for changes to the minutes, not the resolution.
Right, so, well,
Resolution.
the resolution will come next.
And we will update the minutes with whatever we find when we review the tapes on them.
Are we voting tonight on the minutes or
We
not?
can vote on the minutes subject to amendment.
Or not that one.
Yeah, we'll vote on that.
So I had one very specific feedback.
I'm not voting on the minutes.
I know, there's been working on
Okay,
this,
okay, what?
bring it up in public. Mr. Sable had mentioned about making an extreme curve, by the right and only on the entrance by the 4th Street, by the Kika Chavez. That was left out in the minutes. He said extreme curve, maximum possible, and then he said again, maximum possible.
I thought that was the curb height when I looked at that, when I reviewed that.
I know, it's not so clear, but he said it.
But we also have to write it that emergency vehicles have to be able to get in. So that was the counter to my suggestion.
You said that first, and then you said
And what does that mean, maximum curb height? That's something that the.
maximum curve, but curve.
Right, curve, I believe.
What we're trying to do is not let people make illegal left turns in.
You say curb or curb? I thought we were talking about having like a land drop, they call it, in that intersection, so you can't drive over it. I thought that's what we were talking about.
As extreme as possible.
Yeah,
As legally
we're talking
possible.
about the curb.
We talked to Steve Curtis, he made it to hop over it.
Yeah.
We're talking about a curve.
This is not set up, if I have to listen to the,
You have to
audio.
really hear it.
Compare a transcript.
Send us a memo with what your points are, so we don't have to.
Right.
I can play it, there's a video of it.
We're on board with you, we're not hiding anything, we're gonna get them out of it, we'll get it the right way. Mr. Pfeffer is here, he also very much wants to get it done the right way. And John is on board, and the new assistant, we'll get it done.
Okay, and then I'll point out to you the other things that are missing.
You'll be what?
I'll send you a memo, we'll take you.
She said she'll call me up.
No, I don't have your number.
Yes.
I got some other
We
numbers.
welcome the garbage can to the common radio.
Oh, and you know what, once I'm standing here, what did we approve? Which plan?
Ali has it on the record.
Adam,
It's
I
not.
don't know offhand, I wasn't here.
what do you want to do with those doors? Hey, so you want?
Jillian's not here to revise the resolution. I don't know.
You want to discuss what you find?
Yeah, the board said that
Board said no.
Chairman indicated he wasn't comfortable.
I don't know.
It was very unclear which.
You can go, you just
voted on.
Thank you.
Maybe you can email those, plan, exhibit that you're acting on,
What,
or that, the shop is the one that's.
everything's in the record.
Right, so maybe email just.
It's all been uploaded, is it?
There's no issue.
Thank you.
There's no issue with all the voter, I just wanna know, it's an information question.
The way it works is the plans, get modified after the resolution, No. Well, we're gonna have to, I don't know. I talked to Adam about that, we'll deal with that.
Can we approve the July 27th minutes, which are not this one that we're talking about?
Move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you.
Not permanent, not this.
No, July 27th.
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations. Awesome. Actually, can you clarify what the office can? Have been promoted.
That's because all of this stuff after the meeting is garbage and sent home back.
More information.
I'll tell you the very truth. I have an opportunity to do a long construction.
Yes, I think from what I saw, I think you're almost there in terms of doing, in terms of design changes.
Then go ahead and tell Josh.
Yeah, I don't understand.
That guy is gonna come back with a site plan, or he's gonna get building permits, and he's gonna want a CO. So Jeff is telling me that when he wants a CO, the sidewalk is gonna have to be. But he owns lot 2. How is anyone gonna require a sidewalk on lot 1, which is remaining untouched? Why should the new owner, which is lot 2, be required to put a sidewalk on my property, which is lot 1? And how is anyone gonna come to me and say, you need to put a sidewalk because he wants a CO on his lot? That's his problem. So basically, this is more than the sidewalk that requires another. Basically, I'm feeling really let down.
I can't answer as to how the engineering department is moving forward in the installation of sidewalks.
I don't know, I thought everyone had my back.
No, I understand your concern, we try not to get involved in each other's business, and we can't make a guess as to how they run that department and what their procedures are.
I hear, okay, I'm gonna call Josh, see if we can get him.
Okay. You're welcome, have a good night.
You too.
Now we can deal with that number issue, whether it's 1 or 2, we can just bring it up to say that the board will have.
Wait, also, I don't know, one other question. Why is the zone, whatever, the tax map